Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Center for Railroad Photography and Arts December online program. I'm going to go ahead and get my screen sharing going here. All right. Okay. Hopefully everybody can see that okay. We have, oh, looks like we're right at 7. So, all right, we've started on time. Welcome to everyone again. My name is Lisa Hardy, and I'm the program administrator for the Center for Railroad Photography and Art. Tonight, we celebrate the incredible photography of the one and only Jim Ehrenberger. This presentation would not be happening without your overwhelming and kind support. We have had such a great interest in this program, with many people joining us for the first time. If you're here for the first time, tell us in the chat where you're joining us from. We love seeing comments throughout the presentation. Encourage you to share any connections, thoughts, or impressions you have. Elrond Lawrence will be in the chat, so he'll be there definitely checking in with all of you. Please remember that following the presentation, we will be holding a short Q&A session with Jim. To have your question asked live, make sure you use the Q&A section to ensure that we see it. With so many new friends with us tonight, I want to quickly introduce the center. We are the Center for Railroad Photography and Art. Our mission is to preserve and present significant images of railroading. In this image by Henry Posner III, the Hart's Narrow Gauge Railway's DR Class 9923 steam locomotive 997235 sits at the snow-covered summit of Brocken Mountain in Germany in November 1997. I thought this photograph was particularly appropriate for the winter weather we've been enjoying in Wisconsin. The center is a 501c3 nonprofit arts and education organization. Our members are the engine that keeps us moving forward, and we are so grateful for you. If you'd like to become a member, it's really easy. For only $50 a year, members have access to our members-only online programs, discounted rates for our conferences, and a subscription to our quarterly magazine, Railroad Heritage. In 2025, we had 4 fantastic issues shown here. Our first issue for 2026 has been sent out, and if you become a member today, we'll make sure to get one sent to you. To become a member, visit our website at www.railphoto-art.org/support. Our core primary initiatives include our Railroad Heritage Visual Archive that can be accessed on our website, exhibitions, and publications. We recently finished a fall book sale, and we're thrilled that so many of you purchased many of our books. If you are looking for a great holiday gift this season for a train lover in your life, I highly encourage you to visit our website and take a look at all of our publications at www.railphoto-art.org/publications. We also have our John E. Gruber Creative Photography Awards program, and in September, we announced the theme for 2026, Water. This Ron C. Hill photograph showcases a Southern Pacific Railroad light engine as it creates a mirror reflection of the snow-capped Mount Elbert and Crystal Lakes at Malta, south of Leadville, Colorado, on June 28, 1995. Submission rules and guidelines can be found on our website at www.railphoto-art.org/award/water. We encourage all to participate. Winners receive cash prizes and more. We look forward to seeing your photography. Each year we hold an annual conference. This year we are inviting you to join us in Indianapolis, Indiana at the Indiana History Center on April 24th through the 26th. Tickets will go on sale on Monday, January 5th. I was recently reviewing our lineup of presenters for next year. It's gonna be good. With all that said, let's get to the main event for tonight. My first interaction with James Ehernberger was earlier this year in late July. He had been selected as the 3rd place winner for black and white photography in the John E. Gruber Creative Photography Awards program for 2025. As I introduced myself, I called him James. He quickly interjected, "Call me Jim. Only my enemies call me James." And with that one statement, I knew I was talking to an instant friend. As I've worked with Jim over the past couple of months to select photographs, He told me it's so hard to choose which photographs to share because, quote, they're all my favorites. I must say that I agree. They're all my favorites too, Jim. James L. Ehrenberger was born in Omaha, Nebraska in 1937 and moved to Cheyenne, Wyoming 75 years ago in 1950. He was hired by the Union Pacific Railroad in Cheyenne shortly after his 16th birthday as a train crew caller, a position that worked the night shift and notified crewmen without phones that their time to report for work was upon them. This position led to numerous jobs during the following 35 years. Due to a lack of college education, Jim accepted a management buyout option and retired in 1988. During his working years, by hard work improving his ability, Jim worked as a private secretary to the division superintendent, train dispatcher, and finally as manager of operating rules and regulations and safety. Having now been retired for 38 years, Jim has explored many foreign countries searching for steam power. During the past 65 years, Jim has co-authored or authored about 50 books and numerous magazine articles, especially for the Union Pacific Historical Society. Jim still resides in Cheyenne, Wyoming, and remains busy with daily activities and train trips. In April 2024, Jim was awarded the Railway and Locomotive Historical Society's Gerald M. Best Senior Achievement Award for his commitment to railroad history. This well-deserved award was given to Jim at the Union Pacific Steam Shop, a special place for Jim, who worked there during his time with the Union Pacific. This photograph shown here is Jim standing with his award in front of Big Boy 4014. One final item to note, Jim amassed a huge collection of photographs, negatives, and transparencies of trains, estimated at more than 100,000 artifacts. This collection can now be found at the University of Wyoming's American Heritage Center in Laramie and is a testament to Jim's love of trains. Trains.com has a fantastic article about Jim's collection that was written in August 2025. If you want to learn more, I encourage you to go to trains.com. It is my tremendous honor to share with each of you an opportunity to get to know Jim through his stories and photographs tonight. I have a feeling we're never going to forget what we see in here tonight. Jim, I'll turn it over to you.
Here,
All
thank,
right.
thank you very much, Lisa, and the team at the Center for Railroad Photography and Art. I think I've been a member almost from the beginning. John Gruber was operating it at the beginning that I joined, and so it's been quite a pleasure to put all this together. And it's difficult really to decide what to do, and so that's why I sent you so many for you to make those choices, so that those choices are Lisa's, but they represent my photography from 1953 when I acquired the Graflex camera, and the camera, the film became obsolete about 1974. So I had to change to a different format camera, but this is a picture of the camera, and it was a large box, and it had a lot of mechanism. Like this bottom was would adjust whether it was high or low, and then we had a table here that would give the low and the high for different speeds. The shutter speed, which was a curtain shutter, on the lows was up as high as 800th of a second, and on the high was 1,000th of a second. Most of my photography, because trains did not operate real fast, and a lot of these are taken only at a 400th of a second at probably about f8, depending on the type of film. It was entirely manual. There's nothing like what we have today where there's so much automation. And so this gadget there, it would change that curtain up to those settings that I needed. And then of course the lens was also manual, and like it's set on f8 right now. And now we'll start with the pictures. Gives you an idea. That's probably what this was taking. It was only making 15 miles an hour. It's the last run on the Saratoga encampment branch of the Union Pacific. I lost some photos that day because I did not lay off of work. Back in those days, I lived from payday to payday, and so I didn't ask for time off, and I should have because I couldn't make it back home over snowy range to make a shortcut due to a United Airlines plane crash, and they had the highway closed, so I had to come back the long way to make it to work later that afternoon. So this is the last train on the Saratoga encampment branch with steam power. The locomotive was built in 1890, and it's now currently on exhibit in the lower level of the Union Station Museum in Omaha, Nebraska. It was empty cars of livestock going up to load livestock. This was typical in the fall, like this October 7th, 1955. The livestock was grazed in the higher elevations, and then they shipped them out in the fall. And that's what they're doing here, is getting ready to load out livestock. Next. This was a view I took of a crew on a work train at Albin, Wyoming. And I'm going to point out the individual on the left was a conductor who I was a good friend of, and he was a rail fan, and we chummed around quite a lot until he got married. But I spent the entire day on this operation on the work train, and the next view will show what they're doing. We'll go to the next, Lisa. They due to the erosion, they would go up there and have to come and dig out a lot of the dirt that moved during the winter and rainy season, and they loaded in an air dump car. That's what that crane is doing, is picking up the dirt and going to put it in that air dump car. Then they would go out on a high fill and dump the residue dirt and come back and do some more. This work train was over there for about 2 weeks, and I rode the engine all day and went around taking pictures. It was infested with rattlesnakes, but I didn't encounter any that day. Another unusual thing took place and I discovered was this inspection car on the Burlington. It was a 1940 Ford, and the assistant superintendent from Sterling made a monthly inspection trip to Cheyenne on the branch line that came in from Sterling, and the other fellow is a roadmaster. Well, I was so fascinated with this operation that I did not take any other pictures other than this one. What they did, the car was headed the opposite direction. That roadmaster, he opened the trunk, he got out a jack and a plate and a kind of a X kind of a thing that unfolded, and he put it underneath that car, and they jacked it up, and each one of them got on each end of the car, and they turned it around right in front of me. I now regret, of course, I have a lot of regrets, but I regret that I didn't take a picture of the car crossways along the track. But just an interesting thing. Thank you. But on this Burlington branch that came up from Sterling, Colorado, they operated the oldest locomotive on the Burlington system. It was built in 1903 at Havelock, Nebraska. The reason that they used this locomotive was because there was one bridge that could not handle heavier power. And of course, the first time I saw it in about 1952 on a school holiday, I couldn't believe that anything like that was operating, because the Union Pacific next door had modern power, and here is this thing coming in. And of course, at that time, it had a larger headlight, and just fascinated me so much that I became quite interested. And this is the reason that I really got into some book publishing situations with people like Lucius Beebe, who called me. and wanted some of my photographs of this line for his upcoming book that was called The Age of Steam. Well, things happened on the railroad, and they went east out of Cheyenne in 1953, this shortly after I got the Graflex camera. And the rails were spread. The track conditions weren't very good. And so they had just departed the yard and starting to make 25 miles an hour their top speed and jumped the track. So I spent the day out there with this. The crew is the reason that I got so really extra interest in this, because they treated me so good. Every one of them was, I guess maybe they thought I was so fascinated with the railroad that they just liked to have somebody around that liked it. But the man on the right was my favorite engineer. And this is on when he made his last trip in December 1954. He turned 65. And I shot with the Graflex flash shot. I didn't have it set on a tripod or anything, so it turned out pretty good. So. Well, every winter almost they had snow problems on this line, and one of my spots where I used to photograph was about 50 miles east of Cheyenne. I would go to this little town. It was called Keota, and it's actually a ghost town today. There's hardly anything there. Maybe a highway department vehicle or somebody operates a grader. But anyway, the old man that ran the general store came there in 1910 and was very interesting. And of course, I was interested in the history of the line, and I'd get a soda pop there and visit with him. Come to find out later on, when James Michener was doing his book Centennial, he also interviewed Mr. Stanley at that store. And Mr. Stanley is one of three people who James Michener dedicated that book Centennial to. And it started at Keota, Colorado. Further west, getting closer to Cheyenne, about 15 miles east of Cheyenne, this same snowplow train came in later in the afternoon. It doesn't look like much snow here in comparison to the opening photograph that you saw with that snowplow working with all that snow being plowed. They had a lot of problems with snow because the snow fences were gone, and they had cuts and strong Wyoming winds, northern Colorado winds, and snow. It didn't take much snow to pile it up, and they had to run these snow plows. Well, in 1955, it was, as I mentioned, there was wind. Well, there's additional wind. East of that little town of Keota was another station called Buckingham, and one of the fields nearby, the strong wind blew the dirt on the rail. They had 8 inches of dirt over the top of the track. So the day before, I had to work, so I couldn't go down to take pictures, but I followed the train on the eastward trip. So they towed the Jordan spreader and they widened that area out where the dirt had drifted. And it just another problems with some of these little branch lines. And I tried to record everything that took place on it. This was sort of a special move in a way, although the Burlington operated the locomotive for about 2 weeks in 1956 during wheat harvest. And so because of this, there was a group of about a dozen from Denver that came up and rode the train, and I arranged for photo stops. And this was a photo stop on the trestle that had the restriction for locomotives. This was the heaviest locomotive that was allowed on that trestle. And it's just, of course, typical for photographers. They made little smoke for us. Another unusual movement took place. The normal train operation during the winter time, they had been using a motor car. You can see behind that switch engine, there's a motor car, and this motor car had 400 horsepower capability, and coming westbound, they could move 6 cars, eastbound 12 cars. They came into Cheyenne, and a blizzard came up, happened, and so it marooned the crew and the motor car in Cheyenne. So they had to come out and plow out. So the diesel shoved that wedge plow to Cheyenne, and then they turned it all and put it together, and they actually double-headed it, had 2 crews on it, so it made it a unique movement. Only time I saw it was that particular trip in 1959. Well, unfortunately, I was so interested in this railroad, but time took its toll because by 1980, the entire line was gone. And this is a view in 1975 when they were starting to tear it out. It's kind of sad to take photos of dismantling of track, but I'd rather take photos of them building it, but I wasn't here in 1887. So this is the best I could do to record the history of it. That was my goal. On the Union Pacific at Gearing, Nebraska, they had quite a group of sugar beet runs over on that line. And this happened to be the last day that a steam operation took place out of the Gearing terminal. After that, it was dieselized. It was in October 1957. Well, another thing that took place in the 1950s a lot was discontinuance of passenger trains. This happened frequently. On January 31st, 1956, the little local train that operated between Cheyenne and Denver was discontinued. This is the last run of it leaving Cheyenne. Just 2 weeks prior to this, they had the last 462 or Pacific type engine on it, but the flue time ran out on it, so it ended up with the 800 class locomotives leaving the Cheyenne terminal for Denver. It was typical also in 1956 to operate quite a few double-headed passenger trains. They still preferred to operate over Sherman Hill with the passenger trains because the Sherman Hill direct line was 9 miles shorter than the Harriman line that they constructed in 1953 for the purpose of eliminating freight diesel or freight freight helper engines. And so this was typical almost daily at this time to see double-headed trains going out. This was number 27, the Overland for San Francisco. Another thing that I liked was, of course, was LaSalle, Colorado. LaSalle, Colorado had another beehive of different types of locals operating out of there because during the sugar beet season, then they had about 6 or 7 locals. And so this is one of them that was leaving LaSalle during the time they still had the semaphore signals that came out about 6 years later. They put in centralized traffic control and eliminated the signals on the Dent line. And this happens to be leaving on that Dent line. It was an alternate main line, and they used to have it where they would run trains over that line or the main line between Denver and LaSalle in those days. Well, the very last revenue steam train that I photographed is this one. It was the 3715 and 3712 eastbound out of Cheyenne on July the 19th, 1959. During the summer of 1959, we had a brief steam operation between Cheyenne and North Platte. They used these Challenger locomotives. They were oil burners. East of North Platte, they used the 800 class on freight. West of Cheyenne, we had just a handful of the big boys operating, and due to a national steel strike, steam ceased within about 2 weeks. And so this is, in my opinion, one of my rarer photos, because I didn't get out as much as I should have, because we thought that steam would last on up into the fall livestock rush, and it didn't. We got fooled that year. 1958 was a very good year for a big boy operation between Cheyenne and Laramie. Prior to 1958 and 1957, they used the big boys on west of Green River. Every year they seemed to cut it back just a little more, and in 1958 it was only between Cheyenne and Laramie. What they would use the steam over Sherman Hill or between Cheyenne and Laramie, and at Laramie they turned the turbine or the diesel locomotives, and everything west of Laramie operated with diesel. So this is a scene up on Sherman Hill west of Harriman. That scene is almost impossible to take today because of the growth of the foliage. I saw a picture recently that just barely could get that scene. Two big boys, 4014 and 4001, are west of MK. MK is a station on the number 3 track that went through Harriman. And of course, it's a power transfer. It's not a case that they had to have that much motive power, but they did have to transfer power because there's predominant movement of eastward trains, so they had to get the power over to Laramie. Well, it was about near zero, and I took this picture in 1955 at Archer. That overpass in the background is slated to be removed, and that's rail fans' paradise for taking pictures. Unfortunately, it's not going to be there, but anyway, this was the North Platte Valley train. It went to Yoder and mixed train, and it operated on a daily schedule with the 7800 class locomotives. They were the mountain type. And the last year for those locomotives was in 1956. The Union Pacific put out, the mechanical department ordered the discontinuance of 3 classes of locomotives, one for 1956. One was the Pacific, one was the mountains like this, and the other was the 9000s. All 3 of those were off the roster by the end of the year. There's a 9000 rear end view looking west at Archer. Used to have his depot there, and it had followed that train up, and it's getting late in the day, as you can tell by the rails. The car right in the foreground, it looks like maybe shell casings. We're not real sure what they are, but I thought that's what it is. Here's a case of a big boy at Colores, Wyoming in 1958. I followed this out of Laramie and on up to this location. And it's a situation where the wind changed direction. You can see that it's carrying that smoke over quite a ways, but they could smoke. They could smoke. Another favorite there at Colores is this rock. It's known as Ship Rock. This is a Rocky Mountain Railroad Club excursion in 1972. The Rocky Mountain Railroad Club and the Intermountain chapter of the NRHS both operated excursions from Denver to Laramie, and this was the Rocky Mountain Railroad Club excursion. They operated in May around Memorial Day, and the NRHS would operate in September or thereabouts. My friend Roy, that I had the picture of, he kept up with a lot of operations around the country, and he corresponded with a well-known Santa Fe person by the name of Lloyd Stagner in Kansas. And Lloyd told him about these helpers in New Mexico that came out just during the summertime to handle the fruit rush. And so the eastbound trains from Belen, New Mexico, up to the top at Mountain Air, about 44 miles, had steam helpers. They had this particular year, they had some of these 210-4s, the 5,000 class. They also had the 484s, the 2900s, and a 3700 or two, all 484s. And it was a very interesting thing. We went there and only spent a couple days that year, and the previous year or following year, we went back again, and that was the end of steam on the Santa Fe. So the day, July 2nd, 1956, was the day after the interview, and we went down to the yard, and this was a train getting ready to leave. And of course, they had a big curve there, and this is a good smoker, and so it made a good, nice picture I like. And this was the end of our trip on the Santa Fe. From here, we went to Alamosa and spent the night. And then the next day, I photographed the narrow gauge work train west of Salida unloading ties to make that line from Salida to Monarch into standard gauge. North of Cheyenne, the Colorado and Southern Railroad operated steam up until 1959. It was a very interesting operation. When one went up there, you could really only get one train, but it was fairly easy to follow. I used to try to get some of my railfan friends from Denver to go up there and do some of this, and most of them wanted to go on Sherman Hill where they could get several trains. So I was kind of a lone ranger up here a lot of times photographing this line, although I had other friends that I did encourage to go with me. So, but anyway, this is a doubleheader returning from Horse Creek, Wyoming area to Cheyenne. And this is very late in the season, January 2nd, 1959. They operated 210-2s from Denver to Fort Collins. And this is the Fort Collins local at a place called McClellan's, which is just south of Fort Collins. Another unusual thing that came about, and some of these you just stumble on. This particular day, I was heading for Durango, and just happened to getting west of Alamosa, and near the foot of Wolf Creek Pass, I just happened to come up on this train. Excuse me. So it was a stock loader, another one of those fall stock movements where they would go up with empties and load the stock that was being grazed in the national forest and so on. And so that it was between South Fork and on the Creed branch. And I followed it until I couldn't get any more pictures. The sun was setting, but Lucius Beebe did use some of these photographs in one of his Rio Grande books. Well, steam was gone except for excursions, and the only operation we had with steam anywhere in the area close to Cheyenne was over at Laramie. The cement plant operated a couple 060s that went out to the quarry. They would leave the cement plant in the morning and go on out. So I'd go over there and follow up different times and just kind of got something here I thought was a little unique having the windmill in it. Good Western scene. That engine, by the way, is at the Railroad Museum now. Another time in 1956, going east from Gearing, Nebraska to North Platte, a friend and I was touring around, and I just happened to stumble on this thing at Llewellyn, Nebraska. It was a bucket coal loader. I couldn't hardly believe the Union Pacific could have something like that, but they did. And so anyway, I stopped and photographed. I actually photographed it on different sites, and I entered this in one of the photo contests, and I got second prize or something on it. Harriman, Wyoming was mid location between Cheyenne and Dale Junction, and it required that the westbound trains would stop at this location and take on more coal and also water. The water tank just came down last year, but the coal chute disappeared in about 1960. So this is a view at what the railroad had to build new facilities when they opened up that line in 1953. Well, my life started as far as railroading was in Bushnell, Nebraska. This was our depot. It was a small town. The town was only 250. But I spent a lot of time there at this Bushnell depot, and the agent treated me real well. I learned the Morse code. I also was so enamored with railroading that he used to give me all of his obsolete timetables and a lot of other things. I think it partly helped him, saving him taking the trash out. But anyway, I had a lot of memories there. I lived there 6 years. And by the way, that little cart over on the right side, it's just a hand cart. That used to be at the post office, and the postmaster used to push that cart with mail bags in it down to put the mail on the mail trains. Again, there's some more things that should have been photographed, but it wasn't anything I was doing in those days. I was very interested in depot photography. And of course, Cheyenne had this nice, beautiful stone structure that was built in 1886 and 1887. And it's still a museum, and they have offices upstairs, but it's been renovated. I was on the committee that to save the depot, and we raised about $5 million, but it wasn't enough because before it was completed and everything that they've done there, it's about 25 million. But it's a beautiful structure, and thank goodness it's here for forever, we hope. But in the fall of 1971, the train sheds came down. Amtrak did come into Cheyenne, but it was no need for those two trains to have much of a facility like the Union Pacific, because when I hired out on the railroad in 1953 across Wyoming, we had 11 passenger trains each way every day. And so little by little, I witnessed this. In fact, it affected my seniority on the railroad, the discontinuance of passenger trains, because we had employees who worked the mail cars and also baggage cars. So they would come back to our roster, and seniority seemed to go backwards for quite a while. Along the UP, though, they did have a lot of beautiful stations, and this one lasted until just 2 or 3 years ago. It was torn down at Columbus, Nebraska, and it was a stone structure. Many of these were just too weak to actually save and move off the property. The railroad really wants those off the property. They don't want the liability, I guess. Green River, Wyoming is still there. There's talk of trying to save it. I don't know. I haven't seen much progress, but maybe somebody knows more than I do. Julesburg, Colorado was a unique station. It's still there, but it's been set back some distance from the track. These stations that appear like this was built by, there was an architect by the name of G. Stanley Underwood from Los Angeles that the UP had contracted with to build stations in the late 1920s and early 1930s. And this is one of those stations. There's quite a number of them, and some have been saved. Well, just a little combination of stations. Table Rock was a World War II telegraph office. They did not have telegraph offices during the Depression days, but when World War II came, they added a lot of positions because they had a lot of freight traffic and needed to issue train orders, and they opened this station. But then later it was section people lived in it. Medicine Bow is a museum. It's in the upper left, and in the lower left is Rawlins, Wyoming, and both of those still exist. All three of those still exist. But I read in the bulletins where they were discontinuing stations, so I started photographing them in the about 1962, right in there. Well, this was an experience I had. One of the gentlemen that was the assistant superintendent on that picture of that inspection car 9038 that was earlier on in this presentation, he was he was assistant superintendent, and his son became superintendent at Alliance, Nebraska later. And in 1967, they had a hearing here in Cheyenne to discontinue the Denver to Billings passenger train. And I talked to his son, and I asked if there's a possibility that I could get him to stop the train so I could take a picture in Wind River Canyon and also Sheep Canyon. This is inaccessible other than on the train. So they sent a message. He gave the authority and sent a message when I rode the train out of Cheyenne and got it. The new crew at Casper, they had the message and showed it to me that they would be stopping. So this is kind of an interesting thing because Bernard Corbin used this photo in one of his Burlington books, and his caption says the train is speeding through Sheep Canyon. But if you look close back there at the back, the rear brakeman is standing there waiting for me to finish taking the picture. So it was not speeding, I'll tell you that. And this is the same train, but a year earlier, I drove up to Wind River Canyon area, and it was a wonderful place to take photographs. And this morning schedule on the train from Denver to Billings was perfect, especially in June and when the sun was real high in the summer, to get some beautiful photos in that canyon. And from the train that I rode and took the picture at Sheep Canyon was they made a lot of station stops, and this was at Franny. This is near the Montana border. I don't know about that lunch house over there. We did not have lunch there. I know that, but it was a typical station scene. People stopped the crew and waiting for something to depart. So here again is the reason I got interested and decided to get these station views, because here's Eustis, Nebraska on the left in 1968 is an active station. And here it is on the right, the last time I saw it. The Union Pacific acquired 25 gas turbine locomotives starting in, the first one was a demonstrator in 1950, but after that they ordered 25 of them, and they came one by one. It was kind of slow, and this picture was taken in 1954 at Laramie on turbine 64 on its maiden trip coming out of the factory going to Ogden, Utah. Originally, these locomotives operated on the Ogden to Green River segment, but as they received more of them, they started moving them further east, and they eventually even went on into Nebraska to Omaha and Council Bluffs. But this is at Laramie, and I mentioned earlier that they relayed power a lot at Laramie, and that's exactly what was taking place with the two trains on the right-hand side. Is that they had come in with steam and they put diesels on them to take them on west. There was a branch line out of Laramie, and they used an SD7 type locomotive with a snowplow on it. And this is at a station called Fox Park. Fox Park happens to be the highest point on the entire Union Pacific Railroad at 9,000 some feet. Sherman Summit is not that high, but after they now no longer have the line over there, then Sherman is back being the highest point on the railroad. As far as Wyoming, I'm not sure about the Moffett Road. Well, I got on the interstate overpass and risked my life to take this picture because I wanted the signals in it. And this is the city of Los Angeles dropping down into Cheyenne. By this time, you can see they started hauling more head-end equipment. And eventually, these trains were consolidated to the point where they might be as many as 28 cars. They would put on a helper conductor on those trains east out of here, especially. I was touring around in Nebraska and following a lot of Chicago Northwestern stations in northeastern Nebraska on what's now known, there are a lot of people referred to as the Cowboy Line. And so at Norfolk, Nebraska, the Northwestern also operated there, and so I caught this Union Pacific local that tied up during the daytime. It was tied up there for the day in 1968. Well, other equipment on the railroad that's obsolete now. You don't. There's one here in Cheyenne, but it's retired. But they're the derricks. These, of course, this is a steam derrick. We still had a lot of those as late as 1975, and this one was at Grand Island, Nebraska. But there's a diesel derrick here in Cheyenne that's to be retired. I don't know. They haven't made a decision on a disposition yet. But they've eliminated on-track equipment. They've gone to off-track equipment, rubber tired loaders and different types of things. And of course, derailments are now contracted for picking them up. It's no longer like it used to be. Nothing like it is. I witnessed railroading from the telegraph days to the computer age, and what a change! What a change it's been in these years since I first saw it. In the 1970s, they started retiring work trains, and this is some of the former dining car. This is a dining car that was retired and was sitting at north of Greeley, Colorado, waiting for disposition. These cars were kind of unique, though, because they were known as Harriman cars. Built, some of them was Harriman design of the Harriman era. Other equipment, roadway equipment, like the Burlington had that Jordan spreader. This is a Jordan spreader, the side view. And they had it over Rock River, which is west of Laramie, about 38 miles, with a work train ballast, handling ballast. Well, it was a typical move during the winter time at Laramie on the branch that operated between Laramie and Walden, that they went over with a rotary snowplow. This is taken in 1957. I rode on it the year before on a snowplow train, but this was in 57, and this rotary is now at the Forney Museum in Denver. But every other trip they would go over there with the rotary because the wind filled in some of the low spots like this, and they had to clear it out. That's what this scene is west of Laramie. Whoops. Well, this is the end. Cabooses are the end, you know, and it's the end for this caboose. I'll guarantee you. Some switchman failed to line the switch for the caboose track, and they kicked some cars down there, sent it against this caboose, and this is the result. But perhaps maybe it's only about 20 years early, because 20 years or 25 years later, there's no cabooses. So what a deal! What a deal! Some more what they call, you know, progressive days. Maybe it was regressive. I don't know. Thank you. I really enjoyed showing these to you, and I'm open for questions.
Whew, that was I so much to share, so much to say. Elrond, do you want to start us off with the first question?
Yeah. First of all, Jim, thank you so much. What an amazing tour that was. That we just saw it feels like the entire span of railroading in one show. I think the one question I saw this pop up in our chat, someone asked about your camera, about your Graflex, and I just wondered, now that was sheet film, correct? That
No, not always.
no? Is it roll film?
I'll explain it a little.
Yeah,
Yes,
could you? That'd be great.
film. I had cut film on this camera sitting here right now. It does have the cut film holder on the back. I don't know how well this shows, but
Could you hold it a little closer? Oh, there
the
we go.
film
Thank
holder
you.
back where my thumb is. Well,
Hmm.
since I only had 10, 10 5 of these holders, then going out on railroad trips, you need a lot of these. I know somebody, different ones. So Victor Hand used stuff like this. And so I would use what was called film packs. And a film pack
Oh.
had 12, and they're thin negatives comparatively. And you put that film pack in, and it had a piece of paper. You pulled it out to put the first shot so that it was, and there is a dark plate that kept it from getting light. And so anyway, you could use it
Hmm.
about 12 exposures you could get on one film pack. They were more expensive. It was pretty pricey, but that's what I used most generally. Then later,
Hmm.
they started discontinuing film. Now, my camera is not, if I had had a 4x5 size, I could film the film today. But this is a 3¼ by 4¼ Kodak discontinued the film. So I had a friend in Denver, a machinist that liked to tinker around with stuff. And I took an old 616 camera to him and took some enough, one of those film packs adapters. And I told him I need this camera mounted so that we can use roll film. So for
Okay.
about I'm going to say a good 6 years at least, I used roll film, and it was 616, the same roll film that a lot of rail fans used with their roster type shots. And it
Mm.
worked real good, and it's touchy. You have to have it just exact, and he did do that. He was qualified enough to make it so the pictures would still be sharp. So you saw a lot of those depot pictures in this, later on, as late as 1972 and 75. They're all
Mhm.
taken with that roll film.
Oh, got it. That is so cool. Thanks so
Fantastic.
much.
Um, Tim Johnson said, amazing photos and stories. This is what rail fanning is all about. I thought that was a nice comment there.
Yeah, cool.
Blair asked, what year did you leave the UP and what job were you doing at the time?
Well, when the story goes back just slightly before I went to work for the railroad. In May of 1953, the Rocky Mountain Railroad Club operated an excursion from Denver to Laramie. And it was, they used to have a lot of press releases in the Denver Post. And so I checked on that. And my agent here in Cheyenne told me that he would sell me a ticket from Borey, which is 9 miles west of town, where the line from Denver intersects with the Sherman Hill line. And so he sold me a ticket from Borey to Laramie in return. And on that trip, I met people like Dick Kindig and Otto Perry, and several others had the Graflex type camera. Well, in the meantime, I had met this Union Pacific yardmaster, and he was a shutterbug, and he asked me after we got back about the trip, and I told him, I said, "Oh yeah, it was great." And I told him, I said, "You should have seen these big cameras some of these guys had." I told him about it, and he said, "Well, that's a Graflex." And I said, "Well, that's pretty neat." And he said, "Would you like one?" I said, "Well, I don't have any money. I was only 15." And he said, "Well, how old are you?" And I told him 15. He said, "When will you be 16?" And I said, "July." He said, "If I can get you a job on the railroad, would you buy my camera?" Yes, I said I would. So on my 16th birthday, the railroad handed me the application papers and so on, and my folks had to sign a miner's release and various things. And on August 7th, 1953, I had my first shift on the railroad, and it was as a call boy, train crew caller. I worked the night shift because I still had to go to high school half a day. So I worked the night shift, went up to these downtown hotels where some of these guys, they didn't have phones. A lot of people didn't have phones. And so I'd go up there and pound on the door and tell them at 8 o'clock in the morning, you have to go to work at 3, and so on and so forth. So that's how it started. And then of course, as time went on and seniority, and they needed help in different places. And I was never afraid to take another job. I moved up as fast as I could. Took many years, but
Mhm.
it paid off.
Yeah, it's great. We had a question from Mark Perry. What is your favorite book of your photographs?
Should I say what someone asked Dick Kindig at one of our favorite photographs? And he replied, "They're all my favorite photographs." It's difficult for me to really say favorite. I, even though I worked for the Union Pacific and I had a lot of inside information, like being able to get lineups and stuff like that because of my jobs, I still liked that little Burlington branch line. I would say that that was the most unique part of my interest in it. And but there's so many things. And then of course traveling to foreign countries in later years and seeing steam operations and all this and that. I was telling someone just recently they wanted to know about going to Cuba. I did go to Cuba with the Trains Unlimited tour, and we had permission from the U.S. Treasury Department to do this on a humanitarian basis. Of course, you know, for railroad photography, that's humanitarian, you know. So,
You're doing a public service.
so anyway, but on that Cuba adventure, we had a fellow there that hung around with us all the time, a young fellow, and he even sold some rule books and a few things like that. But I never did quite trust that fellow. I thought there's something strange. Why is he here? Well, one day he asked me where I was from, and I told him Cheyenne, Wyoming.
Mm-hmm.
So the next day he said, "You have missiles."
Oh,
And sure,
uh-oh.
we do have missiles. This is our military base is a missile base. And we have missile sites all around this area. But we're not the only ones. They're up in North Dakota and all around. But that's what he said. So I think he was a spy.
Wow. Well, I
Crazy.
didn't expect to get a spy story tonight.
Yes. Um,
That's that's wild.
yeah. Cliff Downey asked, great photos. How many color slides did you shoot?
Well, I had this camera rigged. Dick Kindig had his Graflex with a little box on top so that it was lined up, and he had a 35 millimeter that he could put in there, and he could shoot a 35 slide and a black and white near at the same time. And so I fixed mine the same way. Now I had a single lens reflex uh, exacta camera, and
Okay.
it's pretty nice because I could put it in that box I made is made out of aluminum, and have it lined up just perfect. And I actually could view through my Graflex and hold my hand a certain way, and I could snap them both almost same time. Uh, I don't
Nice.
know how many. I really don't have a count. I looking back, there's a lot of hindsight, as I've mentioned. I did not record stuff. What I did, like my pictures, I did record dates and locations. I did do that on. I filed the negatives, but and then on slides, I tried to do that, but slides you get behind on it. But I did take a lot of slides. I don't know how many thousands. I'm sure. And of course, the black and white photos. I
Mhm.
have no idea the numbers. And of course, what we did, I had some other equipment, and the rail fans in the 1950s, it was a fad that we would trade between us, different ones. Like maybe I had a friend,
Mhm.
Portland, Oregon, that took pictures of steam, and I would take pictures here or somewhere, and so we would trade negatives. So as a result, oftentimes I might sometimes I took a whole roll of eight exposures, eight negatives on that 16 camera, and it was a pocket camera like a folding camera, but it was excellent.
Oh.
So on. So we did a lot of that. And I find even right now I need to go through the slides. They have not been turned over to Laramie, and I need to go through them and I need to pull out the duplicates because I did shoot some things. If there's a nice view somewhere or something standing still, I might have taken three or four extras. I know I did.
Um, I've had some people ask about were all of tonight's images scanned from your prints?
What about the scans?
Were they scanned from your prints?
Well, all of them were scanned from the prints. Now, most of my prints, a good friend of mine here in Cheyenne did my darkroom work. He was a grandmaster in darkroom work, and he I'm sure did I don't know how many hundreds and hundreds of prints, mostly 8x10s, and
Mhm.
uh, I did do it early on, but where I lived, we had a septic tank, and you cannot photograph washing photos and handling them in a dark room and everything and so on. It just was not compatible with the septic system because it would fill the septic system up with water, and then you'd have to get it pumped out, and that
Mm.
per chunk of money, which I didn't have. So I'd rather have it for film. So anyway, so my friend Jack Wolf, and that name probably will ring a bell with a lot of listeners because he was very active, and I always said that I did the steam era and he did the diesel era. He came along and
Oh.
really did the diesel era, and his negatives are of the Union Pacific diesels are over at Laramie also. There's several collections at Laramie now. Um, some people have wondered why didn't I do some things different? Like I did have Colorado and I have Nebraska and I've got different things, which I could have maybe divided them up or something, but I did not do that because uh, because of the locations. In the meantime, I purchased about 35 collections from various friends and photographers that I knew or other sources. So as a result, there's 105,000 black and white negatives at Laramie, but a lot of those are other collections. I even have the Dick Kindig negative over there at Laramie. So,
Hmm.
and so now this is something I think it isn't quite compatible for some archives to uh, have say things that are not from that particular photographer. That's a variety. Secondly, it uh, the Laramie American Heritage Center is a very large institution. They have not only railroad stuff that they've really gotten into, but they have movie stars. They have the Anaconda Copper Company's collections. They have a lot of political stuff, so it's a combination, but they love the transportation. And what I set up there was an endowment for transportation collections. It's not just railroad, it's transportation. Because I actually, when in my timetable collecting and some of that, I collected bus timetables, airline timetables, and stuff like that. So it's transportation. So
Well,
Right. So my good friend Kate, hi Kate. Do you have a favorite location on the UP or other line that impressed you the most?
uh,
that's
Union Pacific.
mm,
Well, I loved that line through Harriman where
mm,
the one picture is taken with the rock in the background and all that. That was such a great place to take photographs. I would say that
mm.
that's probably my favorite if I have to make that choice. I rode the train last year in the beige car going from Cheyenne to Laramie, and
The big boy train?
we went on that line, and gee, that brought back a lot of memories. I saw spots there that I could look up and see right where I was standing to take some of those pictures.
Wow.
and it's so scenic. And back in the days in 1950s when the big boys were operating, and of course the railroad always filled those trains out to maximum tonnage as much as possible. So if you had a 105 car reefer train, those reefer cars are heavier than other types, and so a big boy going up on that line through Harriman, the maximum speed it would make be about 25 miles an hour. Now,
Mm.
diesel age, we really gained a lot of speed, but well, sometimes I should. Sometimes I wonder, but anyway.
Yeah. Um, Go ahead. So Bruce asked, what kept the water towers from freezing in the winter?
Well, they I wasn't involved with the water service department very much, but they they had they were very thick walled. They weren't just and also, of course, when you have that much of a volume, you probably would still have water in the center, even. And that's kind of a difficult question for me because I could come up with several scenarios. Uh, some of them even had heaters in them. Some of them had like a stove, and they had people who was assigned to the water service department. All of these different railroad departments that I look back on the number of jobs and things that we had. We had coal chute operators and handlers and coal chutes. We had water service department. We had an electrical department. We had the B&B, which is bridge and building. We all always joked about them that if you needed a picture hung in a depot, they probably bring a bridge spike and put it in the wall. But anyway, that's not true. But that's what we used to joke in the office about. But anyway, but the bridge and building they did bridge and building. They came in and painted. They remodeled, and they also did the road crossings too. They put down the planks and things at road crossings. So, and then of course there's a maintenance department. We had section houses almost every 6 or 8 miles apart. Uh, and when welded rail type track laying came, they eliminated a lot of jobs because the old joint rail required tightening bolts and driving spikes. It was not as solid as what it is today. And of course, now even there's some concrete ties. So it's
Sure.
I rode these trains like when I went to Laramie last year. I also went to Denver this year on the special one, and that the railroad today rides like glass. It really is nice.
Mm.
Yes, it's improved. The machinery has done an awful lot of technology and all with railroad construction.
Yeah. Mark asked, what was your favorite class of steam locomotive to photograph?
Well, I like the 9,000 class, and there is one 9,000. They put out the order to junk them all in 1956, but one was saved, and it's 9,000 even, and it's out at Pomona, California.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a three-cylinder locomotive. Now the UP had 88 of those, and they started with those in 1926, and they it was really unique. It was unique because it was an offbeat exhaust. You'd have now this is demonstrating it, and I hope nobody laughs too loud, but they would go like choo choo choo, choo choo choo, as they gain speed. And one night, I was supposed to go to work at midnight, and out east of Cheyenne where I lived, it was in the summertime and the windows open and so on. And there was an eastbound train that had a different sound and whistle on it. And I heard him whistle for the curve, which was the Burlington where you go under the, and I heard him whistle there. And then I heard him whistle off, like somebody gave a signal or something. I think they had gotten around a slow order, and he whistled off and he opened up that throttle, and I heard that unique sound in the night going up Archer, or it's a grade going up there 8,200%. And what a unique locomotive.
Oh.
And so I think I guess I would favor those really, although the modern power like the 800s and those 38 and 3900s and 4000s, I understand from railroad crews that those were the best locomotives the Union Pacific had, and their riding quality was so improved over other locomotives too.
Hmm. Wow, that's
Um,
amazing.
well, we'll do one final question. A lot of people are very interested to know if your negatives and slides might become available online.
Well, one of these days, I'm sorry to say, but I'm going to have to learn how to say no because I keep taking on another job. Now, I have a presentation that I'm going to do out here at our Cheyenne Frontier Days Museum in January on a PowerPoint, and I haven't even started. And then I've also got the Wyoming State Archives I've committed to next year, but start. I've got to start doing more. The problem is that I'm short-staffed.
You're a one-man shop.
Yeah, yeah, and actually I could use help, but to do that, it takes money to pay them, and I haven't found anybody that wanted to work for nothing.
We need to recruit you a volunteer crew.
Yes. Well, we'll end with that. Thank you, everybody, for joining us tonight. What an
Mm.
amazing presentation, Jim. Your life of photographs and stories are just remarkable and so memorable. We're so grateful for you and for taking the time to be with us this evening. Thank you to all of the people who attended. We're so grateful that so many of you joined us. We almost got up to 300 people, which was remarkable. Thank you. Happy holidays to everybody. We're looking forward to our presentation for our monthly presentation in January. Details to be coming soon, so look for those on our website and social media. And we'll go ahead and with that, call it a night. Thank you again. And again, happy holidays. Stay safe, everybody, and we'll see you next time.
Very much.
Bye.